If I could give words of advice to a younger military-affiliated children, I would tell them to not take where they are and how long they're there for granted. I PCS here to Edwards Air Force Base almost 2 years ago, and it was one of the hardest things I've had to do. I moved from Mana Air Force Base in North Dakota, where I had spent 5 years of my life. My family always planned on me staying there until I graduated next to the friends that I've had since I was 9. Like most friends do, we hung out all the time and enjoyed hockey games and going to the lake together. In early January of 2019, my dad received orders, and they weren't back to Mana Air Force Base. The only options given were MOMC Air Force Base in Great Falls, Montana, where we were stationed prior to North Dakota, Kirtland Air Force Base in Albuquerque, New Mexico, or Edwards Air Force Base here in California. My family had hoped to get orders back to Malmstrom Air Force Base because since we had been there for 9 years prior to North Dakota, we still had family friends that lived there, and it was only 8 hours away from Minot. Shortly after, we found out that my dad's orders were to California, and no one in my family had any desire to live in California. I only had close to 5 short months left with everyone that I knew, and there were so many things we wanted to do, but we didn't get the opportunity to do them because we thought we still had 4 more years before everyone split for college. Also, none of us could drive. We were only 13 and 14. So my advice to children of all ages that are affected by a military family member is, especially my younger self, is to never take your geographical location or situation for granted. Even if you don't love the location you're placed at, later on you might regret not being able to do the things you could have while you were there. There were so many things that I wish I could have done, and now that I'm 1,600 miles away, I regret not going to the movies one night or hanging out that one Friday night, because now that I'm 1,600 miles away, I don't get the opportunity to. And that's it.
I was born right here in Edwards Air Force Base in California. I spent my early infancy years in the desert before I moved to now decommissioned Bitburg Air Force Base in Germany. After 5 years, we were stationed at Little Rock Air Force Base in Arkansas. And my final move came in 2016, where my family resided back in my birthplace at Edwards. Throughout the list of where I traveled, being in a military family, I always struggled with the idea of a home. I never realized how important it meant for people like us. You never know how important home is unless you've had it taken away. Being a military child, I find it hard to find a place to call home. Due to moving all the time and getting into new schools, one can feel very out of place. Yielding to the discomforts and change, you get used to different curriculums, losing friends, saying goodbye, and much more. But growing up in a military lifestyle, it's hard for children to really settle into one home. We have to learn to adapt, accept this abnormality over others. Growing up into the military lifestyle is not something we could prepare for necessarily. We do not expect the duties placed on us by our missions, bases, families, and our country. We meet new people and call them our old friends. We live in different cultures, diversifying our minds and our hearts. And we always call that next base our hopeful new home. So living in such a mobile lifestyle presents a limit in the time we have at a certain location. What personally helped me throughout my moves is taking every opportunity I could find in my base and learning new things from it. Starting earlier really helped me find myself, as I was eager to join clubs and school sports as I entered junior high and high school. It helped me feel like I was a part of something and leaving a legacy through my temporary endeavors at each base. It also helped me call a few places home throughout my distant memories. I remember the first times I played basketball with my friends in Arkansas, which started my journey of sports and even created my inspiration for my goal to get into the field of sports medicine. Getting into the opportunities your base offers can lead your ambitions and show your capabilities beyond what you can imagine. So my advice to military children today is to step out and take that opportunity. Settle down before we take a move and always ground yourself in the opportunities that present to you. We should always focus on what we could do today, which legacy we can impact, and what lives we can change with the people around us. Know what presence you can make in the present. Taking this opportunity could push us further, and we can always do something about ourselves in our process to grow. And you never know, you can always find a place you can call home in the process. Thank you.
Military brat, a child who has parents who are actively serving or retired. This term is meant to show that this child is part of a specific subculture and culture. I have been a part of Edwards Air Force Base since I was in 6th grade. I'm currently a junior at Desert High School. My aunts, uncles, and grandmother have all been military brats. I have frequently heard this term for the past 7 years, whether it be from my family or fellow classmates. I don't have parents who are in the military. I have never been a military brat, but I have grown up around many. I have had the chance to grow up in a specific community which has been able to influence me on how I make decisions, how I view life, and most importantly, how I view the people around me. I have only had to move once in my life, and it was only 4 hours away from my childhood home. Children will move once or twice in a year, whether it be states, countries, or even just cities. I cannot imagine moving over 5 times during middle school and high school. The strength these children have is unthinkable, but they are able to do it. This builds them up for the rest of their life. They are able to adapt to these new cultures and somehow make it their home. This has allowed me to bring all these cultures together. This has allowed them to bring all these cultures together and introduce them to other people who have not had the chance to experience them. This causes them to sacrifice a lot just for the pleasure of others. This is also the case with their parents. These families have sacrificed their right to see relatives, their right to choose where they live, and the right to their body. They do all of this just for the good of their country and their citizens. Being a part of the military is an honorable thing that comes with just a small price to pay. I applaud these families who have sacrificed so much for their country, families, and friends. My favorite part about a military child is their courage, diversity, and experience. They've been able to go through so much, whether it be their family moving, one of their parents getting deployed, or even just adapting to a new environment/people. While this has allowed them to build up their personality and character, it has also caused them to adapt to a specific type of lifestyle, which many people are not able to do. I hope that every military brat is able to make the best out of whatever happens to them, and when it comes to being a part of a military family. I hope that it allows you to grow into the best person that you can possibly be. Thank you.
When asked to give words of advice to younger military students, most people will respond with, "Don't get too connected to the people or the place." While this advice can be good, it's extremely overused to the point where it feels as if this is the only thing you're allowed to say to someone. Personally, I disagree with the statement, "Don't get too attached to the people or the place." My words of advice to younger military-affiliated children is to get attached, get connected, and to plant your roots. When having to continuously move schools, children often feel as if they are unable to make true friends because they never believe that they have the time or the experience to do so. I say to take the little time you think you have to form connections with the new people because you'll never know how long they'll be in your life or how big of an impact they'll have. They could be some of your best friends you've ever had, yet you would have passed it up if you'd taken this basic advice given to all. Take my advice and get attached, make those new friends. By planting yourself into these small communities, you begin to form a community of your own little community where you have the space and freedom to be 100% you. I know the struggle of having to move schools and meet new people. When I first moved to Desert in 7th grade, I thought to myself, don't try to make friends, you're just going to move schools again. I was so fearful because of the false narrative that was embedded into my brain from the past advice I've heard. Never get too attached, never form relationships with people you connect with, are all things that I've heard throughout my life, and I still regret every time I've listened. After finally being brave enough to ignore said advice, I found the people who bring me the most joy in my life. I decided not to waste any time and made friends the first day of school. Those same friends have stuck with me through thick and thin. They are truly my rock. Back in 9th grade, I was told I was going to be moving to Guam for my stepfather's job. I was terrified at first because I had spent the past 2 years building the friendships of a lifetime, yet I thought back and remembered my own advice. I had planted myself within this community, and now it would forever be a piece of me, the piece that I hold dearest to my heart. Once we discovered that we wouldn't have to move, I was ecstatic. Being able to stay with my friends and the community that I built for myself was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that not everybody gets to experience. So take my advice, make connections, and build your community because you'll never know when you'll need them the most.
Being a military child has its positives and negatives. The experiences I gathered from 15 years of being a military child have made me the person I am today. I am flawed, broken, and very quiet, but I am also a good listener, hard worker, and compassionate. I owe these characteristics to my military-affiliated circumstances. Some of the hardest times of my life were the few months that came after a move. Every time I moved, I felt like I had to start over and become a better me. I would always tell myself to be a funnier, more exciting, and popular version of myself. I always failed at this because every time I moved, I became more quiet and learned a little bit more. Being quiet means that I became the kind of person who could listen to the hard things that people felt scared to share. Whatever you become in the face of hardship is the best version of yourself. Whether you talk too much or too little, you are perfect. You don't have to be a different version of yourself. In a new place, the only thing you can fully know is yourself. As military children, our lives revolve around the uneasy feeling of never knowing when we have to move again. It takes a toll on our families and friendships, but don't let this keep you from forming relationships that you are 100% committed to. I have been guilty of being scared to make friends because I always knew that I was going to leave. But the older you get, the more likely you are to keep the relationships that you physically had to leave. The people that are meant to stay in your life will stay. Look for effortless relationships. You have to learn that you create your own happiness. Moving doesn't change your values, goals, personality, interest, and beliefs. Those things are specific to you. They make you. The hardships we face can be unbearable at times, but what hardships aren't? This is your story, so don't forget to live it. If you learn anything from this time in your life, learn that you can be whatever you want, wherever you are. You have to find something universal that you love, something you can be a part of everywhere you go, your piece in the storm. I can't guarantee that you'll find best friends everywhere you move, but I dare you to share your experiences. If you do, you'll find that you're never alone and are so much stronger than depression and anxiety. Just think of how strong you must be to adapt to so many different places. My hardships have made me a quiet person, but they also made me well-versed in understanding that people come from different backgrounds. We all have our baggage because you have to have the bad and the worst before you understand what the good and better look and feel like. Be proud of your story because it is your own.
There's a lot of things to love about being a child of the military, but I think one of the greatest and one of my most personal favorite parts about being a military child would be the benefit of travel. For as long as my family's been part of the Air Force, and it's been a while, moving around is a pretty big thing that was integrated into our lives. And that came with a lot of change and adjustments. I've moved about 3 times in my lifetime, so I've lived in 4 separate places. With constant travel, like learning to adapt to change was pretty important. And to most people, change is a really scary thing. And it is, without a doubt, change is really scary. So, like, traveling for long periods of times, means having to find a new place to call home, meeting new people, leaving behind friends, family, familiarity. And for kids, that typically implies going to a new school. And for a while, it feels like you're kind of walking on eggshells for the moment that you end up somewhere new, and there's a lot of uncertainty and questioning and having to reach out for help. But I found love in going to new places, one place to another, and getting a feel for the different environments and adjusting to new schedules. There's a lot that can be learned from the cultures of different places, and the different weather patterns are really interesting to adjust to. Seeing new sights and going overseas, places entirely out of America, is a privilege that fewer than 50% of Americans have. And while this statistic stands, it's really a nationwide dream to be able to travel and go see new places. So I feel really lucky to have gotten to do that throughout my lifetime. Now, staying in one place for too long feels entirely unnatural. It's weird. And with my dad recently retired after serving 20 years, it's sort of strange when I realize that any means of travel that I'll do will be on my own terms and not orders from the military. So I'll miss the thrill of seeing new places with my family and knowing that I'll live there, but now that I'm growing up, I have the military to thank for my love of travel. I know for certain that I will continue to travel where I can, when I can, and when new opportunities arise. Thank you.
My favorite part of being a military child is moving. It's my favorite part because I get to explore many places, meet new people, understand different languages, and learn new things about the place. I have been to a few different places in my life. I have been stationed to Turkey, Germany, Japan, Missouri, and California. I am going to another place in a few months, and it's always so nice traveling to new places, but I have learned not to get too attached to one place because then I'll get upset. I've always loved to be in Japan due to it being very high tech. I've always thought it was sad when you move and you lose your friends, but a friend of mine moved with me from Japan to Missouri, and it was nice knowing that it isn't so bad moving. It was spectacular how many things I've learned over the years and about many places. I normally feel lucky for getting to travel the world one place at a time, but in a few years I'll have to give up my title of being a military child. I also have some advice for other military children. When you move, don't do anything bad in the place that you are in right now, or if you think it won't ruin your reputation, because it will. I also learned that being a military child isn't so bad due to the fact that you can always get a chance of meeting new people. It's always nice knowing about someone's backstory, life, and getting to know who they really are and not who they act they are. I always find myself underestimating the fact that I always don't get to have a lot of access to stuff other people have. For instance, if I want to get something from a place, I can't because I have to go somewhere else. There's a few pros and cons of being a military child, but it's a unique experience. Thank you for listening.